welcome to Movie Heaven, Movie Hell with me, Simon Aitken,
And I'm Keith Eyles, and we are both independent filmmakers who enjoy discussing film and television franchises and the various expanded and related media. And for this Star Trek Discovery Season 2 special, we have a couple of guests. We have a returning guest who always joins us for these podcasts. We have producer and Star Trek fan Pete Mele. Welcome back, Pete.
Thank you guys again for having me.
No worries. It's always good to make this podcast international, as it were. So always good to have you back. And we've also got a new guest to this podcast. We have reviewer for Horror DNA and Star Trek fan Ryan Holloway. So welcome, Ryan.
Thank you very much. This is an absolute pleasure to be here. So thanks for having me on.
No, pleasure to get some new perspective and a new voice joining us. I was thinking actually beforehand, we always joke, myself, Pete and Simon, that we're like the sort of Kirk, Bones and Spock in these conversations. But I guess for the benefit of this one, we've invited Scotty into the conversation, even though you don't have the Scottish accent.
Yeah, and don't even ask me to do one because it will be terrible.
Oh, well, there's no difference then.
Oh dear, yes, there you go. So we've got even more perspective here. Before we get into, because obviously last season when we did Discovery Season 1, we actually had quite a few episodes because we reviewed the first couple of episodes, and then we came back again during the mid-season break, which obviously they didn't have this year, and again to talk about the Mirror Universe, and then finally to talk about the finale of that season. For this, so far, we've only actually discussed the first two episodes, and it's really one of those situations where I almost wish we were able to do a podcast every week, because I must admit, every week after seeing an episode, there's always loads I want to talk about. But just to for our new guest, Ryan, just to sort of give a bit of background, we've often talked about how we initially came to Star Trek. I know, like with Simon and myself, we're sort of second generation Star Trek fans, in so much as we grew up with the Star Trek movies and saw reruns of the original series, and then obviously followed everything through. And with Pete, I think Pete kind of, his entry point was the Next Generation, and he obviously went back and watched everything else up until that as well. But what about your relationship to Star Trek and your journey?
Wow, well that's interesting. I mean, it's kind of across the two that you described, really. I mean, I definitely grew up watching the original series as reruns when I was a kid, and being quite obsessed with it very early. Had a lot of toys which I'm constantly on eBay trying to find again, and then through the films, and then I think for me where I got really passionate about it was Next Generation, because I was always a fan of Star Trek and I loved it, and then it just hit me at the right time, and Next Generation was where I really got excited again about Star Trek, and then that was it after that, and it was all about Picard, and I've just followed it ever since, all the various iterations.
Fair enough. Okay, well that's cool. I mean, we're all sort of coming at it, I guess, from similar points then in terms of being Star Trek fans. But so, well, I mean, let's get into it then. We've got a whole season here to cover. I know probably a lot of it will focus on the finale and the outcomes and stuff, but I always want to give the I've obviously got plenty to say as usual, but I like to give the guests sort of the first go, as it were. So I don't mind who goes first, but how are you chaps feeling about Star Trek Discovery Season 2 as a whole?
I will start by refreshing everyone with my opinion of season 1, which was that I could see its flaws, but was still very much on board. And the story grabbed me, and I was energized and excited, and really enjoyed the ride. For season 2, I think I lost interest about halfway through, and everything became fairly predictable. I could see the flaws, I could see the storyline that they were going for, and I was not connected to it. It didn't work for me, and it culminated in a final 2 episodes that I left feeling actually somewhat annoyed at the treatment of the story and the characters. The little things about the little things about the episode that got me angry as they went on were like how every episode there was gonna be a thing in the middle that required some sort of space chase, or techno fight with the how are we gonna do the thing, and then somebody does something amazing and unexpected, and it saves the day, and then you're good. After like the 3rd or 4th time that they did a crazy stunt, with getting in small ships and driving somewhere. Not driving is totally the wrong word, but whatever. I'm flying somewhere. I just sort of went, yeah, I got it. I'm done. I think we said in the first, when we were reviewing the first 2 episodes, a lot of these scenes are reminiscent of Star Trek. What was it? 2007, the first JJ one, right?
Yeah.
2009. Yeah.
2009. And I thought, that's kind of interesting that they're really taking that scene directly from that movie and shoving it in here. But okay. And then I felt like they took that same scene then and put it in 3 other episodes. And by that point, I was like, why are we watching this? What are we doing? So that's my overall feeling. We can go into the specific bits, but yeah.
Sure.
I checked out.
Okay. Ryan?
I think I'm slightly on the other side. The same with season 1. I very much enjoyed it. It was really exciting to have Star Trek back on my TV, and I was along with the ride and really, really enjoyed it. So I was very excited about season 2. Season 2 for me was an improvement, actually. We'll get into the whys and the hows later on, but I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought that they injected a little bit more humor in there. I thought it felt a little bit better with pacing and characters, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it from start to finish. I mean, I will say, there are caveats. I will say that there's a lot going on in season 2. There's a lot of story arcs and a lot of threads. And I think sometimes that kind of confused things ever so slightly. But overall, I was a huge fan, and I loved. I think Pike was something that it really grounded it for me, and huge fan. But yes, we'll go into more detail, I'm sure. But I was hugely impressed with this season.
Cool. And Simon, what about you overall?
Well, I sort of crammed it in this week because I must admit I'm like Pete about halfway through. I was watching it week by week, but then halfway through I sort of kind of went, I'll miss this. I won't watch it this week. And then it grew and grew to, how many episodes I missed, to the point where I literally had to cram in the last like 8 episodes. So I watched them all back to back like the last couple of days.
Wow.
I have a lot of problems with it, and I just think it's when you're watching it and you're kind of caught up in it, you're like, oh, what's going to happen next? But then when you see it and you think about it, you're like, wait a minute, that don't make no sense. And so if they set this up, why can't they do this and that? And there was a lot of stuff in there that they kind of set up, and they either abandoned or just didn't follow through, and also this should be called Retcon Series 2, because it was like you know all those complaints the Star Trek fans have. Don't worry, we're going to sort it out. We're going to sort it out in the most dumbest way ever that makes no sense at all, but we're going to sort it out.
Yeah. No, we'll definitely get into that. But
and I just want to say one other thing as well. I think Spock looked better with a beard. When he had the beard, even though I took the piss out of him at the when we did the other podcast, saying he looked like Paul McCartney out of the Let It Be album. When he shaved that beard off, it's just like, whoa, that don't look like Spock. What happened to Spock?
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Pet Kid definitely looked more like Spock, or looked more like Leonard Nimoy with a beard than without.
Yeah.
There was a moment, where you're like, what character is this now?
Yeah.
Well, I think even the crew looked at him a bit strangely, didn't they? And they probably had the same thought.
Yeah, didn't recognise you without the beard. Yeah, very, very much so. I mean, I'm kind of sort of in between, probably leaning more towards how Ryan felt about it, in so much as well, put it this way. I mean, today we're recording this a week after the season finale aired, and I have to say I missed this morning, not getting up at the crack of dawn, before work, so I could watch the episode, because even though I've got huge problems with some of it, at the same time, I was excited every week for the next episode. I couldn't wait. I had to watch it, as soon as it came on. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I almost felt like immediately after every episode, I wanted to do a podcast on it, simply because there were things I loved in each episode that I wanted to talk about and geek out about. But there was also equally things that frustrated the hell out of me that I thought they'd got completely wrong that I wanted to discuss. So it much like last season, really, I appreciate they tried to do a bit of course correction this season. I don't think they necessarily handled the course correction particularly well, if I'm honest. But at the same time, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I just love that there was Star Trek to watch every week, and it did sort of take me back to my childhood, how I used to get excited about the next episode that would come on the following week. So it sort of, I feel torn, because on one hand it sort of worked for me, yet on others, everything that you've already alluded to, I think is completely valid and I'm on board with. And I sort of think for everything they got right, they also got something wrong. So I'm somewhat divided, but intrigued, if that makes sense.
All right. Well, where should we start? I think first of all we should just say the spoiler warning. We will be going into spoilers, so if you've not finished watching it, probably best to turn it off now, because we're gonna, to discuss our thoughts on this properly. We need to go into spoilers, and that means talking about the ending. So if you haven't seen it yet, go and go and watch it and come back.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Simon. I must start learning to make notes on these things, because that's obviously a very valid warning to put in there, that yes, we're going to be spoiling the hell out of it. So yeah.
Well, I mean, where should we start? That's the question.
Do you want to start the way that the series started, with the red signals?
Okay, let's start with the red signals. All right. So, my prediction of Michael Burnham being the Red Angel was correct.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
I forgot.
Come
That's
on.
right.
Who else was it going to be? I know they threw us a little bit of a curveball with having her mum being the original Red Angel and her being Mark II.
Yeah.
But so the thing is, so the Red Angel appeared. The mother appeared to Spock twice when he was
Yeah.
once he was a child, and then once when he went looking for her. I
No,
really
no, 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 no.
no. What was the second time? Was the time he does the
Was
mind meld?
was to get him out of the, wasn't it to get out of the mental institution? The second.
No, no. The mental institution was that Doctor No Name turns up and says, "Oh, you know those signals you told us about? They've appeared in the sky." And he went,
Oh, right.
"Yeah." So he went to a planet and he did a mind meld with the Red Angel, and that's kind of then he checked himself in. But whatever the mind meld did, it was that whole thing about the numbers he kept repeating when he was on
Yeah.
Vulcan, and he's dyslexic. Sorry, I'm dyslexic, and I can't even say dyslexic. So he's got
Lexdixia rules, KO.
yeah. So as being a dyslexic, I don't get things backwards. I miss. I have problems sometimes saying words. Sometimes they come out wrong. Sometimes I'll see a number and I'll see it as something else that's not there. It's a fun thing to have. So, as a dyslexic, I really thought they got that wrong with Spock's dyslexia. I mean, I love the fact that his mother read Alice in Wonderland with him, because as a child I had a tutor when I was at primary school who actually took me aside for like side classes so I could learn to read. So that was spot on, but the whole the numbers being backwards was a bit. But going back to the Red Angel though, so the original Red Angel was able to move churches from the past to the future, but yet Michael Burnham couldn't do that. She had to literally guide a starship through. And this is the problem with this series, is this sort of inconsistency. So you set one thing up saying, well, look, the Red Angel came along. She took this whole church full of people and moved it to the distant future. Not only to the future, but to another planet, to another galaxy that was, they had to use the spore drive to travel to. Thankfully, Michael Burnham's mother had like a user guide that she recorded, just in case, I don't know, somebody was going to read it. I know that you got like the captain logs and all that kind of stuff, so it's probably what she was doing. But it was kind of like that was kind of funny. It's like she told her about everything else but how to move churches, because that might have been handy somewhere,
Yeah.
Find yourself in a situation where you need to move a church.
Yeah.
No, I mean you're absolutely right, and I think just that comment alone sort of does sum up what one of the fundamental problems is here, is the clarity and logic, no pun intended, over some of this science fiction. It is very confusing and inconsistent and hard to follow. And one of the Robert Burnett Meyer, who directed the film Free Enterprise, which, if nobody's seen, by the way, is a great little movie. But he's been a Star Trek fan all his life, and he's produced a lot of the bonus materials that they put on the Blu-ray release of Next Generation. He's been vocal about this, and I do absolutely sort of agree with everything he's saying, in so much as he said with the old Star Trek, whether it was under Rick Berman or the movies prior, whatever, they used to have on staff scientific advisors to actually try and I know we're talking about aliens and warp speed and transporters and all that sort of stuff, but a lot of the cosmos side of things they tried to keep somewhat scientifically accurate, whereas this show is essentially much more of a, an action adventure show, much like the JJ films, were and started. They're for the sort of generation of now, and that is one of the sad things about this is, even though the spectacle is incredibly well done and really enjoyable and exciting, it does lack the sort of more philosophical, thought-provoking, profound side of what people in inverted commas call sort of old Trek. And even though I thoroughly enjoy this show and I enjoy the JJ movies and all of that stuff, as I've said all along, I do kind of agree with the criticism about the fact that the logic in this show and the plot holes and the, if you like, the more thought-provoking aspects of Star Trek are somewhat lacking against the special effects and spectacle of the whole thing.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I'm thinking about it now, is that they borrowed a lot of stuff from Next Generation. I mean, the finale was literally the same one as when the Enterprise C turned out of nowhere and changed the timeline, and there was literally a battle that the Enterprise D sacrificed themselves to protect the Enterprise C from going back through the time tunnel, and things like when they did the episode about the spore drive, the kind of Alice in Wonderland episode, when they actually went to where the spores are, and they found the Doctor who had died in series 1. That was very much like the episode when they found out that warp drives were damaging the galaxy and what to do. But at least with like both those episodes, there was an outcome. The whole thing with the spore drive, or where the spores exist, was like, it was dropped. It never came into the storyline again.
No, and eventually redacted altogether. But we'll get there. But yeah, no, I agree.
I was waiting for the spores to make an appearance in the end, right? Because they said like everything that we did up to this point, right, has come together to help us defeat this enemy, and then nothing from the spores, right? Even though they made this connection, you were invested in a character from it, over a multiple episode arc, and they're just missing.
Yeah.
Instead, you get a somewhat incongruous spaceships flown by people who didn't know spaceflight existed. 3 episodes before, where when Saru said like, I recognize those ship configurations, it was like, how?
Yes.
How?
Yeah. Well, actually, that's a good point. That's something I was going to ask you when we did the podcast on the first 2 episodes. Because of me being a completist and whatever, I had watched the short treks, and I know at the time you guys hadn't seen them. But what was interesting and what I wasn't expecting in this season is those short treks ended up playing sort of some major plot lines in the latter half of this season. And I wondered, was any of that stuff confusing? Because you had the stuff with Saru's family in one episode, but also key to the finale few episodes, you had the Princess Poe, that Tilly knew and whatever. Now, did that work out of context or not?
I don't think I needed to see those shorts to understand what was going on in those episodes, but
so it worked then.
Yeah,
okay.
But I mean, it was a bit groan-worthy.
Yeah, I'd say groan-worthy.
Well,
right.
Ryan, did you watch the shorts?
See, I haven't watched them, so I did find the Queen moment a touch confusing. but as all these things, you sort of get it, you pick it up pretty quickly. But I think those shorts probably helped. But I think that's part of the problem, isn't it? It's like when they did all those, the viral campaign for things like Prometheus and Alien Covenant, and it's kind of, you shouldn't have to watch extra things to enjoy the main piece.
Anything with the Alien Covenant ones, they should have actually been in the film.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of a shame, isn't it, to sort of go, oh, it does make sense if you watch this extra thing, and that's something that is sort of creeping in a bit too much, and it's. But I'll have to go back and watch them. I'll have to go back and watch the shorts for sure.
Yeah, they are on Netflix. If you go to the bit where the trailers are, they're basically in that section. So they are available. But no, I just wondered if it made sense at all, because definitely the introduction of that Queen Poe character, who obviously plays a key role in the finale there, that was done in one of those short treks, as was, as I said, a lot of the backstory with Saru's sister and whatever. So yeah, I was just curious as to whether it worked without that knowledge or not.
I think I could be remembering wrong, but there's so much going on in this series. I think they went to the planet, and Tilly just ends up saying, "Oh, I know someone from there," and I just remember thinking that's convenient.
Well, yeah, because Michael Burnham went there and did a red signal, and then so that he knew to fly there to meet her. I mean, that was what the Red Angel was. It was to sort of guide them through this whole series. It's like, well, you need to go to this planet to get this person, and you need to go to this planet to get this rock. You need to go to this planet to get the time crystal. It was
like Bill and Ted's, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
We need to go back and do that.
Yeah,
but it already happened.
Me too can play the future game. I went back and gave myself a key. It was like that, really. So this is the thing. I don't know how the red signal works.
I don't think anyone does. I don't think the writers did, to be fair.
Yeah, I remember thinking in the last episode, like, weren't there 7 signals? And, like, how many did we do? And I got to the point where they were like, where I think at one point Burnham says, like, oh, this would be the 7th signal. And I was like, would it? And then I realized I did not care.
Yeah. Yes. Of course, under penalty of court-martial as well.
Indeed. No, I mean, there were a few things like for example, I had a little bit of an issue with the whole time crystals thing being kept on the Klingon, one of those Klingon worlds, just because the whole term time crystals sounds to me much more like something that should be out of the MCU or Lord of the Rings or something, something more sort of fantasy based. I mean, obviously Star Trek's always dealt with time travel, but they've always put it down to either some sort of space phenomenon like a wormhole or whatever, or technology, but time
or
crystal,
slingshotting around the sun.
Exactly, that sort of thing. But a time crystal, that did sort of bother me somewhat, because I was like, I mean, I totally got the whole idea of Klingons experimenting with time, in order to make them better warriors and win wars and all that, because obviously that sort of ties in with what they did in Enterprise, and they were experimenting with eugenics and genetics and all that to make them stronger warriors and give them an advantage in battle and all this. So 100 years on, the evolution made sense. I just had a problem with the fact that there was this monastery somewhere where they had these time crystals, and I'm thinking, well, obviously we've never heard of that before, and now we know why, because obviously it's classified and redacted and all this sort of stuff. But I just had a problem with the fact that they called them time crystals. I know that's a bit of a nitpick, but it just didn't feel very Star Trek to me.
Well, I tell you what else didn't feel very Star Trek was the fact that how friendly the Klingons were to the Federation. I mean, they literally just had a war. In this point in Star Trek lore, they should be negotiating the neutral zone.
Yeah.
But you don't have that. And, they seem to travel into Klingon space quite easily. No problems at all.
Yeah.
So the fact that, I don't know if did we touch upon the fact that they've now grown their hair to make them look more Klingon-like?
Yeah, well, I mean, the trouble with that was, and again, they did this quite a lot. They had a lot of really, really forced throwaway lines to try and retrospectively, fix things, retcon things that that annoyed the fans. So obviously we had the line about, the Klingons now grow their hair and beards now, the war is over kind of thing, even though you never saw one hairy Klingon back on that pilot episode like we talked about.
Yeah.
And also, the whole holograms thing, with Pike saying that he doesn't like them and have them removed from the Enterprise and, and all this sort of thing. And it's as if, again, the problems of doing a prequel.
That hologram one is even worse,
Yeah,
because their explanation for no longer having holograms is because Control was able to manipulate the holograms too easily, even though with our current level of technology, a computer could just as easily manipulate a flat image.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. or take control of a ship or anything. Yeah. I mean, this is the whole problem. Again, we've talked about this before, but the problem with the prequels is they seem to downgrade their tech. It's just like the fact that, again, even though it's classified and redacted, but the spore drive technology exists or existed. Yet, they go backwards, as it were, and there's just a whole load of problems like that they tried to fix with lines of dialogue that didn't really hold water.
Well, I'm going to borrow this line from another podcast I was listening to about Star Trek Discovery, but it is like literally going from our smartphones to a flip phone.
Yes, nice one.
I mean, they literally, they have this technology, the spore drive, that you can go literally anywhere in the universe, and yes, the only working version of it was on Discovery, but it doesn't mean they didn't still have the plans, the schematics, all the logs of the scientists who worked on it. Our engineer in Discovery who figured out how to do it, Stamets. There's all these logs and everything, so they could recreate it. I mean, just to sort of say, well, we're not going to do that now. For no apparent reason. I mean, that's what...
Not even to get Voyager back.
Yeah.
But we do know, though, that they like their flip phones in Star Trek, don't they? So,
But I'm going to say, though, I think that was where they were going with the where the spores exist. That whole thing about, well, you're hurting us. Well, it kind of was. I don't know. This is the thing. Their intent and how they actually did it is absolutely wrong, because their intent was to say, well, look, them using the spore drive was damaging, where the spores existed. But in the story, that's not what they said. They said, because the Doctor was there, or a version of the Doctor, he was infecting their universe because he was there. And so once they removed him from there, everything was fine, which was like, oh, okay. And of course, my I always say this about so much stuff now, is that there is no death. If somebody dies in one of these shows, they'll come back.
Oh, for sure.
And they keep doing it. It's just like death is meaningless. It's supposed to be dramatic, but it's not now. It's because back of your mind it was like, they'll turn up again.
Yeah, Brian, I feel like we're being quite hard on it at the moment.
Started out being champions of it, and I feel like by the end of it we're going to go, God, no, that was rubbish, wasn't it?
Well, what's a positive then?
Oh, Go on, Keith.
Well, I mean, okay. No, there were positives. I mean, if I had to sum this whole show up, right, I think the problem with it, or the good things about it, is that the production values are amazing. I mean, this show, everything from the sets to the costumes and props to the visual effects, everything looks absolutely stellar. It looks as good as it does in the movies, and they've clearly put a lot of money into this, and they clearly have all of the toys and whatever, to the point that I'm actually getting, by the end of the season, I was getting a little bit annoyed with. It felt like the JJ effect, with lens flares and techno heads on cameras and cranes, so that they can constantly have the camera revolving and moving and all that. But then again, I thought,
that was more of a negative, mate. I mean, the scene where they were in the briefing room where the camera kept moving left and right was making me seasick.
Yeah. No, I mean, I did sort of think to myself, the production obviously, affords all these things, and they've got them. And I think, as a sort of, budding filmmaker myself, I thought, I bet, if I had access to all those toys, I'd probably want to use them. So I wasn't sort of knocking them for that. And I think the acting on the most part in this show is also really good, really, really stellar. I like the performances and whatever. What I think lets this show down is...
we were talking positives. Let's do positives.
Okay,
is that the only positives, is that it looked good and the actors were acting well?
No, I'll give other positives.
Please.
References to Star Trek canon when they worked was really good. I.e., I loved the episode that was basically a sequel to The Cage and a prequel to The Menagerie. Yeah, okay. I thought that episode where they had the Telosians back, and they had Melissa George playing the character that Suzanne Oliver played in the original Cage episode. I thought the casting there was really good, and I thought that whole story going back to that planet. I really liked all of that. I thought in terms of a reference and a sequel, that was good. And I even liked the previously on Star Trek where they used actual footage from The Cage in 1966. I thought they handled that whole episode really well, personally. But so there's a positive. I don't know what anybody else thought about that particular episode.
I also thought, Pike, what a huge positive, really, for me.
Absolutely.
I love watching Michael. I mean, obviously she's the character we're following. I thought less so this season, so I don't know if that was deliberate in terms of their intent for a season 3.
Well, this is the question, isn't it? Because I mean, season 3, is there going to be a season 3? I mean, I know
the Pike.
Well, I mean, yes, they're talking about doing the Pike series, which I must admit, I do agree with you guys that the actor who played Captain Pike, spot on, really good. He really felt, that was felt more like Star Trek, and I also think that when we got to see the Enterprise, I mean, that was really nice.
We'll get there.
We'll get there, but
sure.
I mean, that's a positive. I think also number 1 was very good, and I have to say was kind of underutilized. We only got to see her a few times.
Totally.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, Rebecca Romaine is amazing, and it's a shame we didn't get more of her. But Anson Mount as Pike, I mean, not only being a sort of dead ringer for Jeffrey Hunter, he also, obviously this is the most Pike we've had. Jeffrey Hunter only appeared for the one episode, and obviously we had 2 movies with Bruce Greenwood playing the role in the other timeline and whatever, which was great. But Anson Mount has had the most screen time as Pike, and I think has really brought that character to life. And was definitely the you know the standout performance, I think, in this season, for me anyway.
Yeah. Well, also it kind of for me sort of makes me think it's always Kirk or Picard, and now I'm a bit like, is it Kirk, Picard, or Pike? You know, he was that good that I want to see more of him.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think they should just leave Discovery in the future, because what they've done is made the whole last two series redundant. I mean, what's the point of these last two series now, if they can never be mentioned about again?
Yeah.
I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but it is kind of annoying. So I think they should just maybe, if the Discovery is now gone from history, let them go off and have their own adventures. I'd rather see Pike and unshaven Spock. Let him grow a beard or something. Get the beard back. It was just so weird when he came on the bridge. I was, you were expecting to see him as Spock, and then when you saw him, you were like, he looks better with the beard. He just looked so wrong.
It was the fact that he took the bold statement of getting rid of the beard and then thought, I think I'll do the hair as well.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, there was obviously a barber on the way to the bridge. Yeah. And no, he just put a bowl on his head, basically, didn't he?
Yeah. So I want to do both. I thought maybe one or the other, just shave the beard, but not shave. He just went for a whole new. He just went into the hairdressers, went whole new look.
Yeah.
I want a whole new me.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. I mean, I think there's something to be said for, if Discovery season 3, we saw a future that we don't know anything about, might be quite interesting. And not necessarily have to be canon, and not necessarily have to link to all these things that we have seen before. As excited as I am when we do get to see old characters, but it might be interesting to have a whole season that doesn't link to anything and is just its completely own thing. And I think I have enough interest in the crew that's left to see that, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree, and we'll get there for sure. But
can I say about the crew?
Go for it.
I really still don't know much about the crew, and I have to say I think they did something really despicable. The episode Project Dataless. So there's been a character on the bridge who Antonia, my girlfriend, refers to as Robot Lady.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. See, we didn't even know what her name was. We just knew her as Robot Lady, and then suddenly, with the Project Dataless episode, we suddenly got a backstory about her, which was a really touching backstory, and then they killed her off, and you were like, "Fuck you." That episode pissed me off.
It was manipulative, wasn't it?
Very manipulative. And now, when you get to, because at the end of the day, we've seen a bit more of the bridge crew, but we still don't know about them. Not to the fact that with any of the other Star Treks, we knew those characters. We knew Sulu, we knew Chekhov, we knew, Riker, Data, Worf, Geordi. We knew, Kira. We knew, I'm trying to think of other DS9 characters. Odo, Quark, all these surrounding characters. I mean, Voyager, you had Paris, you had, God, the names, there's so many names. But we knew them. We knew these characters. I still don't know the names of most of the bridge crew on Discovery. And then we find out who this one character is, and it's like, oh, it's this very touching backstory, and there's a reason why she's a robot. It's not just to have a robot on the bridge. But and then they kill her off, and that was like, oh man, that's disgusting. But then we get the episode where Pike gets shown his future, and you know, it was like it was a lovely bit of fan service to sort of show him in the chair. You're thinking, oh great, but then you think about the episode of Project Daedalus. You know, that character, Robot Lady, she was in a shuttle crash, and they were able to save her and augment her body into into Robot Lady. You're saying they're not going to do that with Pike? They're just going to stick him in a chair.
Yeah, I
Yes.
do think that. I do think that.
Yeah, that's very true.
Technology to save you. Sorry.
No,
So,
sorry, just stick in the chair because you know that doesn't fit with the rest of the canon because we're trying to fit with
Yeah,
what
yeah.
what happened in the 60s.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say is that, I mean, to be honest, I can't disagree with you on any of that. But I mean, the one thing I would say is that if Discovery season 3 does concentrate on this crew, that will be our chance to get to know them, maybe, as we did with the Next Generation cast and Voyager cast.
No, I think that the problem they have is that because they're trying to have a continuous story arc, because with all the Star Trek series before, they're all standalone episodes. So you could have a Riker episode, you could have a Data episode, you know, you could have a Tom Paris episode. You could concentrate solely on that character, or you can have an event that happens around that one character. But with Discovery for both series, it's all Michael Burnham. You know, at the end of the day, you know, she started the Klingon War, she finished the Klingon War, she's the Red Angel. You know, it's all, you know, and they should. I mean, I have to say the one character who I really enjoyed this series is Saru, and I must admit, in the first series he annoyed the hell out of me, and in this one it's been actually I quite enjoyed his character and what they've done with him. But I still think that, you know, they shouldn't make Michael Burnham the captain because that's the role she's been given. At the end of the day, I like the idea of where they were going from that. The events of everything was going to be seen by a crew member, but it's a crew member who's involved in everything. There isn't a decision on the Discovery that she's not part of.
Yeah.
You know, as a crew member, you're not. Most of those decisions you're not part of.
But the very first, I think it was like the first scene in season 1, episode 1. I think Giorgio said to her, "We should talk about you having your own command." That was back in the first episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fact that it hasn't is a touch odd. I agree.
Well, I mean, the thing is, there is, I mean, I actually really like the Michael Burnham character. I think I might have a thing for Michael Burnham actually, but I don't know. But I like the character. I like the way she's played by Sonequa and whatever. That's great. But the problem is, anyone who mansplains anything either gets shown up by her or killed by an asteroid. Yeah. You know. She corrects Pike on a number of occasions, you know, just like blatantly in some sort of whether it's on the bridge or in the conference room or anything. It's in front of the rest of the crew, and they'll go, "Oh, why don't we tech the tech with the tech here?" And she'll just go, "No, that won't work. But if you tech this tech and add a tachyon to that tech, then it's going to know like, oh yeah, she's right." And you know, this is the thing. Likeable as the character is, I can see why people get annoyed because you know, she is a total know-it-all and always right, and you know, it's kind of I don't know, it almost feels forced sometimes because it does sometimes feel like it's trying to be, you know, really. Well, we'll get to the final episode when we get there, and this will come
It's
up.
Vulcan teachings, isn't it, that makes her a bit know-it-all-y?
It is, yeah. She studied at the Vulcan Institute of Science, didn't she? So she knows a lot.
I don't want to generalize Vulcans. For any Vulcans listening, I apologize.
You're being Vulcanist. Yeah, no, there you go. But in terms of you know, in terms of Saru, I mean, obviously, yes, a major change happened to that character with him, you know, discovering his sort of true backstory and losing his thread ganglia and that sort of stuff. But I do agree that I think it would be really nice if in Star Trek, we've had our African American captain, we've had our female captain. Wouldn't it be nice if we had an alien captain? Wouldn't it be nice if Saru actually got to be the captain of Discovery in the future, 950 years in the future or whatever? But you're right, it will probably be Michael Burnham.
Yeah. No, I mean, they had an opportunity to, give him the captain's chair, and they literally went, "No, we'll sort that out at another time."
Yes.
So, Pete, what's any points you want to put across?
Have we talked about? Here's another thing that annoyed me. Are we back to being negative? Is that okay?
Oh yeah.
Oh, no. Me and Keith have been terrible, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, you guys have not swayed me in my opinion that the show is garbage this season. But the other thing that that checked me out of the end, the last two episodes, was they set up this thing where the magic information AI that now lives in Discovery won't let them destroy the information because it wants to live. But then that kind of says to me, like, the final battle where they're like, oh God, Discovery is going to get destroyed. No, it won't. The thing that lives inside Discovery won't let it get destroyed. So, because that information wants to live, right? So all of these explosions and the ship is going to get torn apart in the wormhole. I was like, well, then good. Mission accomplished, right? Like, you guys wanted to get rid of this information, but it wouldn't, so it felt like, again, a plot flaw that they were trying to use to build tension, but the tension just wasn't there for me.
Well, actually, Pete, there's a question I want to ask you is, what did you think of their interpretation of Section 31?
Do you mean like how it was represented, or?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, for those who don't know, Section 31 was something that was introduced into Deep Space Nine, and it was literally one person. It was a person who would turn up at the bottom of Bashir's bed. No transporter beam, nothing. He would just be there, and he would tell him some information or try and get him to do something. They were always trying to recruit him, but the thing was, it's a shadowy organization that exists in the Federation, but is kind of outside it. It operates outside its laws. So, as it was literally a case of that Section 31 could be anybody.
Yeah.
Wow, did they in the early days? Did they have a big budget?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is true because, like you said, William Sadler played the agent in Deep Space Nine, which obviously takes place some sort of 130 years later than this. And you're right that nobody's heard of them in that time. And even in Into Darkness, Section 31 are mentioned by because obviously Admiral Peter Weller's character, Peter Weller.
I can't kill everything.
Admiral Marcus. Admiral Marcus, yeah, worked for Section 31, but obviously Kirk and Spock at that point didn't know about it. Whereas in this, which obviously takes place around the same sort of time period, in this, I mean, everybody. Not only does everybody know who Section 31 is, that they're recognizable by their by their next generation style comm badges, which again, it's like, oh, okay, so you've got future tech or whatever. But everybody absolutely every time that badge is shown, people go, oh yeah, Section 31, and it's like they're really well known by everyone, and they have a fleet of ships, and they, interestingly, 31 ships, which I thought was quite amusing. Very, very, very well. I mean, of course, they've kind of redacted it again, along with the Discovery and the Spore Drive and Michael Burnham and everything else, but the Mirror Universe and all this sort of stuff by the end of the season. But at the same time, it does sort of feel somewhat unlikely.
It feels unlikely. It also, it felt weird that this whole I don't know, I always felt like the whole purpose of Section 31 was, right, like to operate outside of the bounds of bureaucracy, right, and to actually get stuff done. And then the central tenet here of Section 31 in Discovery is that Section 31's whole purpose is to put every piece of information into a computer and then listen to what the computer says. Mm-hmm. And then we're shocked when the computer tries to kill us. And it was like, what? Like it's bureaucratic to the extreme, and everyone's like, "Oh, the Section 31 computer makes all the decisions, right? Yeah. That then we act on." And it's like, what? Why? What? Why?
Well, the other thing as well is that AI is something that has already been explored in Star Trek. I mean, Data. I mean, literally, he was a machine who wanted to become human.
Yeah.
But
that's later, though. Don't forget.
Okay, but I'm talking Star Trek generally. Star Trek generally is that with AI and computers and stuff like that, they use computers all the time. I mean, the ship computer. Never once has the ship computer really tried to kill them unless it's been taken over by some malevolent force or, some outsider influence. But, they decided, well, we're going to go down the Terminator path. And the whole thing with Control is that it wanted to become sentient by gaining the information they got off the spear. This whole, it's been going around for years gathering information. Well, we guess, we don't know. I mean, it's literally, I don't know. It's kind of, again, there's no kind of explanation or reason for it. I mean, it's kind of like a combination of V'Ger and the well device from Star Trek 4. But, at least with V'Ger, we understood what it was. And with the well thing, we're kind of like, well, okay, it's just this, it's there to find out what happened to the wells, because I guess it came from a whale planet or whatever, but it was kind of straightforward. With Control, it was trying to become sentient, yet it seemed pretty sentient to me already. I mean, the fact that it wanted stuff, so what was it that the computer was going to learn that was going to go, well, I'm going to kill everybody, because he was doing a good job of it already. I mean, we get the sort of, I guess that was a weird thing. They tried to introduce the Borg, didn't they? When sort of Leland got taken over by the nanobites.
Was that really the Borg?
No, no, but
fortunately it wasn't.
It wasn't, but it was going that way. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it was a theory. It was a theory that it was the Borg from First Contact that had also sort of come to surface in an Enterprise episode and all that sort of thing, and they were going to connect it with that. But I'm glad they didn't go there personally. But the whole Control Leyland thing was almost like a blatant rip-off of the Skynet John Connor thing from Terminator.
Yeah.
It was very, very, very similar in its design and everything. So yeah, but yeah, and I mean in the Section 31 thing, it didn't even work in terms of it was following Enterprise, and obviously, Malcolm Reed was involved in Enterprise with some Section 31 stuff, but again, it was totally covert and not known like it was in symbolized and like it was in this. But
I think it's a good point to sort of get into the finale, because I want to say, so Michael Burnham becomes the Red Angel. She got the plans off her mother's logs or something. I don't know. They got the designs for it somewhere.
I thought it came from Tony Stark. Because it was very much like the Iron Man suit, wasn't it?
But I mean, so they had the time crystal, and they were, they're ready to use it, and the goal was to put Discovery in the future to get rid of this information, because the information was protecting itself. It would not let them destroy it. They tried to blow up the ship so that Control wouldn't get it. And I think at this point, Control was Leland. And so in the finale, they kill Leland. So Control's gone, So they didn't need to go into the future.
Oh.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, that did feel like a sort of gaping plot hole, of which there are quite a lot in this show. But impressive as the last episode was, and as the battles etc. were, it did, trying to actually make sense of it. I mean, bearing in mind it's timey-wimey anyway, but trying to make sense of because I must admit, when Giorgio finally sort of defeats Control stroke Leyland, and she magnetizes him in the spore drive chamber and whatever, I did sort of think to myself, oh well, that's it then, they've defeated it, they don't need to go into the future. But I guess the reason they had to do that was because the sphere data still existed on Discovery, and if any of those nanites or any of that nanotechnology did happen to sort of reside, it only takes sort of one, and they could exploit that again. So that was the decision to send them ahead anyway. But yeah, I have to admit, it's a sort of, it's very convoluted, and it's not massively satisfying.
No. But I have to ask as well. I mean, I've jumped forward, now I'm going to jump back, because hey, it's time travel.
We're doing it on the podcast too.
So yeah, the episode where they encountered the
probe.
The probe. Thank you. The probe they send into the time vortex thing, which was they never had to sort of deal with again. It came back as this sort of squid monster straight out of the Matrix.
Oh yes, yeah.
I still don't understand what the deal was with that. So did that come from the future, or was there something inside the probe that Control activated to turn it into this killer squid? Because that made no fucking sense. No,
it made no sense. It was something from the future was reaching back to try to do something, and then what you discover out is that the something in the future is Control, and it's reaching back to make Control sentient, which then puts you into that time loop where how would it have happened?
Yeah.
I feel like this is much like the script meetings.
Yes.
This thing comes from the future, and it tries to do something, and then Michael does something.
Yeah.
No, you're right. It didn't make sense.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the scripts, I think the storyline was literally. I've heard this phrase before, where when you talk about a story and you go and this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and 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 that how it feels like it's gone along, because they've never stopped to say why it's happening or where it's happening. It's just and. Now I don't know if that end point is what they had in mind. It was their way of retconning everything that had happened in the first series to say, well, look, fans, these are the reasons why you never saw a spore drive or this great technology or those shiny suits.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that this is the thing where I was saying earlier about the fact that I can't fault the production values and acting and all this sort of thing. I mean the one area that I would fault, which is the most important area, as we all know, of filmmakers with anything, is the writing, is the storytelling, because a lot of this did have a feeling like it was being made up as it went along. There were massive plot holes and poor explanations for stuff. And I think, part of the problem with that is Alex Kurtzman took over this show, and the show had already been sort of established by Brian Fuller and whatever before his departure, and then the people who followed on from him.
Mm-hmm.
And what they wanted to do, they wanted to do a lot of this course correcting to please the fans, and they were listening to some of the criticism that they had from the previous season and all this sort of thing. And as we know, there's all that sort of bloody legal stuff as well around this in terms of how different it has to be and all that sort of stuff. And what they ended up doing was they ripped themselves off in many respects, because there is so much of this that Kurtzman had already done with the Star Trek, the bad robot movies. But also, there were things that sadly, some things were done very well, and then others weren't done so good. And definitely this last episode, yes, there was a hell of a lot of spectacle going on screen. I mean, we had a space battle here that even sort of shrunk the Dominion War stuff from Deep Space Nine, which to that point had been the sort of biggest space battle scene on a TV show and whatever. And it was all very impressive. But then when he said, "Oh, Giorgio, count again," and all those other ships kind of like broke off from the Section 31, the drone ships. Yeah, suddenly that looked like the swarm thing from Star Trek Beyond. I mean, it was kind of like almost the same, as that. So, yeah, as I said, my feelings are mixed, because there's so many things I enjoyed about this. But at the same time, yeah, if you stop and think about it too much, it's also very easy to criticize, as we've been doing here. So,
well, I mean, the thing is, I'm comparing the finale to season 2 to the finale of Next Generation, which also involved time travel. And the thing about the Next Generation episode is that the concepts and the ideas in there stick with me. The space battles, not so much. And I think that's the same with Discovery. It's great eye candy, but there's no stakes. And, it's a lot of stuff on screen that you can't really make out. And then, it's like, well, our shields are nearly failing. And then, boom, here comes some ships. And here comes the Klingons. And you're just like, yeah, okay, well, we knew that was going to happen, because how are they going to get out of it? Yet, when I think of the Next Generation, I always think about Picard coming up with the theory about what came first, the chicken or the egg. The whole idea of this anomaly that starts in the future and works its way back in time to affect the history of Earth to the point that humans never appear. I still think about this today. Am I going to think about Discovery next week? No.
Yeah, no. I mean, all good things. Was a really well written episode and whatever, and a great finale for Next Gen.
Hell, even the episode of with the two-parter with the Borg, when Picard gets captured, I still think about that than I do this finale.
The problem, I don't know if this is right. I mean, I sometimes think about how with Star Trek Discovery, when they were first thinking about the show, Star Trek, as we know, is a very tricky beast. I feel like when they initially thought of Discovery, is that what they really wanted was not just Star Trek fans. No. What they wanted was a broader audience. We want this to appeal to everybody. And so they made all these judgments, and suddenly they realized, oh, you know what? It's only Star Trek fans watching it. And they're all pissed off. So we now need to fix it. And I feel like they wrote themselves into a corner by trying to be too broad, when what they should have done in the first place is just say, this is Star Trek for Star Trek fans. Yeah. Because that's what Star Trek is. It's very hard to broaden it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, because this show's so expensive, and Netflix and CBS and all that, they I mean, this isn't made for, first through fourth generation Star Trek fans at all. I mean, this is essentially, I think, aimed at the generation that they were trying to capture with the reboot movies, and which is much more glossy action spectacle, fantasy almost, adventure stuff. Whereas bearing in mind, I mean, this is all being made by our generation, the creatives behind this. So it's they're trying to get that balance between some fan service, because they're Star Trek fans themselves, many of the writers on this. So you do get, you got, it was almost like the greatest hits of Star Trek fan service in that last episode. But at the same time, they're trying to make battles that are the biggest thing you've seen on television, and aiming it at the audience that goes see Marvel movies, at the cinema, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's a really difficult balancing act, and I think a lot of Star Trek people, sort of miss those more thought-provoking episodes, which, back in the day you had like 26 episodes per season, and they were, as Simon's already said, very episodic with a few story arcs and character arcs, but you got to focus on stuff. Whereas this, we've got 14 episodes where people want to see the money on screen, and they want it to be exciting, and they want people to come back, those subscribers. Now it's a subscription service. They want to keep those subscriptions going, so people do tune in every week for it. So, and I mean, from my point of view, it was successful at that, because it did make me want to keep watching it. So, as I said, my feelings are somewhat torn. I can see where the problems are, but at the same time, I'm not going to lie and say I don't enjoy this stuff, because I do.
Well, I enjoy spending time with this crew, but there's a lot of ironing out, and that's why I'd like to see a Discovery 3 in the future, because a lot of those problems could be ironed out. But is it too late?
Well, no. Apparently, the third season has been green lit, and it is going to be, 950 years in the future with the the crew of Discovery, those characters that they've developed over the last couple of seasons, and the ship and the look and everything of that. But 950 years in the future, which is still 700 years ahead of the Picard era season that we're going to also get. And they do say, I mean, whether or not this is true, but I can kind of see what they're doing, because Brian Fuller wanted to set that show 10 years before Kirk, Spock and the Enterprise, as they originally, said it. They wanted to set it in that period. And now, this has jumped ahead of any Star Trek that we've seen in anything. I mean, even in Enterprise, Daniels came from the 31st century, and I think the time ships or whatever in Voyager were from like the 29th or something. But this is going to be in the 33rd century, so this is way ahead of anything. And as these guys are now in the future and redacted from Star Trek history, they can pretty much go where they want with it. And this is the opportunity now for those characters that we've seen and don't know very well to suddenly get familiar with, so hopefully they'll do that.
Yeah, no, I really hope they do. I mean, I just wonder, do you think it's too late for the fans? I think is what I'm kind of getting at, because obviously, we've discussed today a lot of, have people switched off already to the idea of it?
Yeah, well, I'll say that one, I think Star Trek fans are hard to switch off. But I will say that in the US, I have to pay CBS directly to be able to watch this. It does not get to piggyback off my already existing Netflix account. And to be honest, nothing else that CBS offers on its app is of any interest, right? Or isn't available somewhere else. And so I've already canceled my subscription, but I am going to renew it again when season 3 comes along. But I'm just not interested in paying the $5 a month or $7 a month for the 10 months out of the year when they're not airing Star Trek.
Yeah, I mean this is the thing, isn't it? This is the problem. The model, clearly this show is very expensive, and the model is for people to subscribe to this service and tune in, and they do have to make it broad, to get those subscribers, because even though there are millions of Star Trek fans in the world, that love Star Trek, that's still a small percentage of the audience that they need to reach in order to keep, being able to afford to do this. So it is business versus art always. And, I just wish that the writing, and the development, bearing in mind they do get a whole year between these seasons that we're getting, hopefully now they've removed themselves from the canon continuity, and they've put themselves far enough not to clash with the other series, the Picard series that's in development at the moment. Hopefully we can get back to keeping the spectacle and the visual effects and everything in perspective, but at the same time really getting into some interesting Star Trek stories and themes and characters, and develop those out and flesh them out, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, maybe be good to have an episode. Maybe Michael goes on a holiday to Risa and has an adventure there.
Yes.
Yeah, just an episode that's away from the spaceships and all the rest of it would be quite nice.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, the CBS model is kind of like something that a lot of the other studios are looking at. I mean, we're getting Disney Plus later this year.
Yes.
And what they're doing at the moment is they're slowly taking their content off other like Netflix and Amazon Prime, and they're only available for this Disney Plus app. And also they're creating new content like The Mandalorian and various other Star Wars projects that they want to put on there. So Disney Plus is something I think a lot of people will go for, because they literally own everything now. All our favorite genre series, they own, and I don't know, way things are going, they'll probably own Star Trek soon.
Yeah, I know they're definitely looking to take over the planet, as it were. But the thing is, yes, Disney have launched that, and Star Trek on CBS is literally going to be competing with Star Wars on Disney, because obviously, like you said, they've got The Mandalorian, they've got various animated shows. They're going to do a Cassian Andor show, which is him and K2O before the events of Rogue One, which is going to be like a kind of espionage spy Star Wars show. And obviously they've talked about a Section 31 Star Trek show, which is going to be sort of a espionage shows and an animated Star Trek series. So again, they are literally competing on similar platforms in a similar a similar demographic. And
but my point being is that CBS only has Star Trek. I don't know what else they've got on the app.
Yeah, honest to God, it's like nothing.
Oh, Disney have got all of Fox's back catalogue, as well as as well as their own huge back catalogue.
If you want to stream a Disney film from when this app launches, that's the only way.
Yeah.
You won't be able to do it through anything else, and you've seen them slowly pull the catalogs off these other sites.
That's why the Marvel stuff is coming off of Netflix.
Oh yeah, big time, big time.
Yeah.
But I mean, about this show in the future, this Star Trek in the future. One of those short treks, which actually was probably the most interesting one, it was called Calypso, and that had an abandoned Discovery in a nebula. And it said at the time that it was like 1,000 years in the future. Now, I don't know whether that's 1,000 years in the future from where they've jumped from, or 1,000 years ahead of that. But in that, the Discovery is completely abandoned, and there is an AI on board the Discovery, a sentient computer on Discovery. So I don't know whether wherever they're going to go with season 3, 4, whatever, is going to eventually lead to sort of explaining that. But that was definitely something they set up in one of those Trek shorts.
I don't know, Keith. I mean, the thing is, as we've seen in series 2, is that they're very happy to just drop things.
True. Yes.
The whole, where the spores come from or where they exist, never gone back to again. It doesn't play a part in the finale at all. I mean, that was the thing. When Leland went into Spore Drive, I thought they were going to, maybe transport him somewhere, or, use the spores on him instead of, magnetizing the floor. Because that was, okay, that was the thing that really, again, sort of thinking about it, is like, well, if they knew that through Spock, destroying that other AI, why not just set a trap? I mean, Michael Burnham had seen the future, knew he was going to board them. Set a trap. Have one section on the bridge when he steps on it, just hit the magnets, and well, hey, he's gone. No, this whole, oh, we're surprised to see you, and let's have a running battle throughout the whole ship.
I mean, I do want to say, I think I'm getting the impression that we all agree on one thing, that apart from a very impressive visual effects space battle, the finale from a story and character point of view was somewhat underwhelming, and that's kind of a shame to sort of finish on that, because I remember when a couple of episodes earlier, when Burnham's mother appears, and Burnham was going to essentially not sacrifice herself, but die for a time on the asteroid until they could capture the Angel, and Spock was there, and he was saying, no, logically we need to wait, we can't revive her just yet, and all of this sort of thing. And obviously Giorgio had a brilliant sort of, it was great to see Michelle Yeoh doing some of her fighting skills, on and all that. I remember, that episode just being really exciting, really engaging, and then with Burnham, losing the oxygen and all this, I was, because I really liked that character, I was actually quite moved, and I remember texting Ryan afterwards, going, "Oh my God, that episode was awesome! Did you see that?" and all this. So we're now talking about how we feel kind of at the end of the whole season, and yes, there's a lot of criticism there, and we've still got some to go. But I do want to say we didn't obviously do a podcast throughout the season of this, but some of these episodes that they've had this season have been really, really good, moving, emotional, exciting Star Trek episodes. So I do want to say that, because it does feel like we're really ragging on this at the moment.
No, you raise a really good point, actually. I mean, because there were beautiful episodes. I really loved the episode with Saru, and we thought we were losing Saru.
Yes,
and that was a wonderful episode. And perhaps there should have been more of that. But I completely agree with you. Looking at it as a whole, it's very easy to pick holes. But yeah, like I think there has been some lovely little moments in there.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a shame that, a lot of the original Star Trek stuff, those episodes help propel characters and stuff, and they just seem to, in this, they didn't seem to matter. They didn't seem to aid the story. They're just these sort of like, I guess, diamonds in the rough.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of rough in this. I mean, we're ragging on it for good reason, because they've spent all this money on it, the amount of man hours just to do the battle, the finale,
Yeah.
hundreds of people in cubicles on computers, but yet they couldn't seem to get a writing team who could come up with an overall storyline that made sense, that was engaging, and didn't make you feel at the end of it going, well, what was the point?
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree entirely with that. What you're saying there. I mean, one of the things that from a character point of view in this is that there doesn't seem to be any consequence for anything, and
Yeah.
I aim that at the Ash Tyler character, actually, because in the last season, he was obviously like, the Klingon sleeper agent type thing there with the Voke thing, but he killed the Doctor. Yeah, he killed the ship's doctor, Culber, and he killed Stamets' partner, basically. And of course, obviously, we get him back this season, and he's gone into the future with them. Culber has now, so he's resurrected, as it were. But Ash Tyler then became like a sort of ally with them, and it's like you think to yourself, well, only a few months ago you killed you killed that character, and that seems to have been completely forgotten about. There doesn't seem to be any real consequence with it.
Well, there was that one scene where they had the fight in the food area.
True.
But then they seem to work out their differences by punching each other.
Yeah.
Still raised a good point. Like, he was this sleeper agent. It's like, I know, let's put him in Section 31, so he knows all the secrets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, not only that he's put into Section 31, he now runs it. He is now in charge of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But Pete, you're being quiet there. I mean, I know you love Star Trek, Pete. So come on, there must have been things in this that worked for you, even though there's a lot that didn't.
I was really hoping I wouldn't have to be nice. Yeah, I still enjoyed the characters. And maybe that's why I got angry towards the end, is that I still think that, Burnham is a great character. And Tilly is a great character. Pike was a great character. All of the bridge crew, whose names we don't know, they're still interesting, and so they do have, you said it. Sorry, Simon, you said it right. They're diamonds in there, but the writing staff, the production staff, is not taking the time to let them get unearthed and polished and shown in their best light. They take these great characters and then just make them run through stupid stuff for 15 minutes that's supposed to be, climactic at the end. What did I think was broaching on interesting this season was there was maybe 2 minutes of show where Stamets and what's the guy's name? Culber have to deal with Ash Tyler being back. And I thought that was going to go somewhere great, but it didn't. You know what I will say is I did really like the Klingon stuff. I thought that the Ash Tyler and Vogue stuff and the rise of Chancellor Laurel was done pretty well. But then again, there wasn't, I felt like, a great payoff. The payoff of their abandoned son turning into an adult 2 months later was non-existent.
Yeah, that was weird. That was weird.
What was the point of that? Like, I don't know. I don't know what we gained from that.
Nothing at all.
And
it's just having a character who's like, well, we kind of familiar with that.
We're familiar with that.
Yeah. I mean, he could just have been the keeper of the crystals.
Yeah. There could have been, they could have done 1,000 things with that. But they didn't. They just sort of tossed it off. And the horror of Pike seeing what he turns into, right? Like, did that really, did we sit with that in some of the ways that you sit with, the struggles that Picard goes through with the Borg, or that Archer goes through as he, compromises his morals? I guess to some extent you could say that Janeway went through as well. Although that's also one of my complaints about Voyager, is that I don't think they gave those moments their due, and instead they just they sort of went, you get the idea, right? Here, this is what we did. You get it. Now look at this thing blow up. For comparison, we've been talking an hour and a half, and we just don't care about the admiral who died.
I was going to bring her up.
We're definitely gonna get there to the ending. But
but like, why? Why should we? Why should we?
Yeah, but I mean, the thing was, she was in the finale of the last season as well. She sort of literally, she just turns up, for this, and then when she died, it was like,
okay,
yeah. I mean, on the Pike thing, I agree totally with what Simon says about how the actual technology makes no sense, because you had the character of Ariam, where they were able to take her consciousness and put it into a robotic body, so you got robot lady, as you put it, and all this, but with the Pike thing, because I did watch, this is how sad my life is, but I did watch the Menagerie 2-part TOS season that obviously takes place 13 years after this or whatever, and in terms of fan service, they totally got the look of Anson Mount's Pike in a wheelchair. They got all of that sort of thing spot on, and it was really nice that they showed what they mentioned in that episode about the him rescuing the cadets from the from the warp reactor overload. And that was all done really well. Although one thing I thought was weird was they had yet another load of uniforms, and I was like, it was like Pike's uniform was almost like the uniforms that Kirk and Spot wear at the beginning of Into Darkness. It was like yet another uniform, but I loved all of that stuff, but I mean, maybe we should talk about the finale then, unless Ryan, have you got anything, because I know you enjoyed the series for the most part, have you got any other sort of highlight bits that you want to talk about?
Oh wow, I feel like I've gone too far down the negative rabbit hole to bring myself back. No, I mean I think what Keith, I mean mostly you and I have kind of talked about. I do enjoy spending time with the characters, whatever's sort of going on, and I do like the links to the original series. I just like watching it, and that sounds a little bit lame, but I do enjoy just watching it every week. I think I mean, Pete hinted at this or said this earlier. I think the problem is that you just don't need a disaster every episode. And so I think some of the episodes would have been nicer. I would have liked more episodes like Saru's. I would have liked a lot more of that, because that was a massive highlight for me, and just getting to know some of those characters a bit better. But yeah, I'm ready to delve into the finale.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I think that Saru episode really did, tap into, what Star Trek used to be about, and the sort of messing with the Prime Directive or General Order 1 or whatever they're calling it in this, and whether or not they should interfere with an evolving species and all this sort of thing. I thought that was really interesting, and I remember when I saw that episode, I was like, afterwards, that was a fantastic character episode, and they really delved into Saru, and I care about Saru, and I thought that really worked. So there was definitely good in there, but the season finale, well. Yeah, what we're getting to.
Yeah, I mean, the things with next. I just want to say that the things with Next Generation that I kind of like is that it's really a kind of a soap opera set in space. In that, it didn't matter that they were in space. The stories were still very human. Whereas Discovery is just a little bit too. You're in space. This is all going to be about space, and it doesn't go into the sort of psychology of any of the characters, and in any depth, and that's a shame.
Yeah, nor scientific accuracy, but yes.
no, because that wouldn't it, like for the script on Next Generation, it used to just say, I think it was LeVar Burton said this. The script would just say science babble. It would be say techno babble in brackets. Yeah. And then someone actually thought the rest of it through. Which is wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with sci-fi, yeah, you can get away with stuff. You can, you can have. See, my dyslexia is kicking in. I know what I want to say. I just can't say the damn words. But I don't know. I mean, okay, we're getting into the finale. Well, one of the things is just the weirdest thing. So they had to protect Michael Byrne, and she had to get, far enough away that she could start, making this time vortex so that Discovery could fly through it. And yet, so this battle's raging on, and yet she has time to, talk to Spock, and Spock, talks back to her about, I guess, feelings. I guess I don't know quite. I can't remember. I mean, I only watched this a couple of days ago, and the conversation they were having was kind of like, it was that weird thing where, there's urgent things happening, and yet they have time to sort of, talk to each other. It was just like, wait a minute, guys, you should have done this earlier when we were building up to it, not why it's actually happening. But yeah, it's just. But then the drones and everything were not attacking them, and there didn't seem to be a defense perimeter around them, and they seemed so vulnerable. Yet you just felt like, but nothing's gonna happen. I mean, the shuttle got hit, so we knew Spock couldn't get onto Discovery to go with his sister.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on their relationship.
well, yeah. I mean, obviously, a lot of people think it's quite cheesy that Burnham essentially is the one that sort of told him to find someone, not like him and reach out to them. So in other words, set up the relationship between him and Kirk, when they get there. But at the same time, I have to admit, I thought that was all quite nicely done. If I'm honest, I didn't mind that it was a quick breather from all the intense action, even though I appreciate it doesn't make sort of logical sense. But I quite enjoyed that moment between them personally.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, I'm going to get into it. You forced my hand, but again, it's this whole thing with Michael Berman is the center of everything. She's God at the end of the day. I mean, it's literally what they've made this character to be, because she knows everything and she is everything and she sets everything else in motion. So Spock's, you know, I guess well, I mean, the thing was, he was the science officer before, this whole Red Angel thing started to happen. So this sort of decision for him at the end, to sort of, I'm going to be the science officer you know, in honor of my sister, who, showed me what it was to be a Vulcan human. And just like, oh, for fuck's sake, can we not? We talk about this a lot on our podcasts about how we have these sort of strong, independent female characters, and I know it's this pendulum thing that's happening at the moment where, you know, for a long time, female characters were not that strong, or, wasn't that well written, and the pendulum swung now that you got to have a strong, independent female character.
There was definitely some Me Too stuff going on in this episode, particularly because there were a number of scenes where the women were doing everything and the men were either, well, they were like incapacitated in some way. You had like Stamets, was obviously injured on a bet, and Pike and Saru were sat down in command chairs, but you had Admiral Cornwall #1,
diffusing
the bomb
torpedo,
which I have to say, the whole bomb defusing thing, or should I say the resolution to the bomb defusing thing, was absolute nonsense. It's like, this can only be closed from the inside, and I know, Pike, it's going to be a photon torpedo that's going to explode, but you just stand the other side of that glass and watch. It was kind of ridiculous. That was, I must admit.
It's like I'll come down, even though this massive battle's going on, and I should really be concentrating on that, because I have got my best people down there trying to disarm this, and he didn't really need to be there. But can I just finish my point? I was going to say that I think the pendulum will swing back to a more even keel, a more even ground, that we just have good characters. Nobody's perfect, nobody knows everything, and I mean, this is the problem we have with sort of Star Trek and Star Wars at the moment, is that we have these strong, independent women who, they're perfect, and it is overcompensating for the past where female characters weren't that involved. I mean, think the original Star Trek, having a black African woman on the bridge was a big leap for TV, even though all she did was, message coming in, Captain. Her involvement in the stories wasn't that great, even though Uhura is a character we all remember, and she had her moments, and she did go on some of the away missions and stuff. But I mean, that's not character wise. We love her, but she didn't affect much in the stories. I mean, in the movie, she was a bigger player. She's certainly got her due more in the films, and we, Star Trek have been very progressive with female characters, but it's with Discovery, it's the whole where we are now with female characters, that they are, they have to be bigger than big. And I feel they'll get back to it, because people are being turned off by it. I mean, even the demographic that they're going for, they just want, all we want to see is good characters, male, female, alien, animals, whatever. We just want a story, a character we can relate to. We want to see them struggle. We want to see them, get past the adversity. If you know everything, it's boring. It's like, Michael Burnham can't be the only person who has the solution to everything, because then that just, as I say, it makes her like a god character. It's like, so, it, yeah, it's annoying from that point of view. I mean, the first series was kind of interesting that she instigated the Klingon War and then was like a prior. She was in jail and she got, she was given a sort of a pardon to go and be on the Discovery because they were using this as the tip of the spear, this ship, this experimental ship, and because of, I guess, her knowledge or whatever, she was brought on and she was slowly being, getting back and redeeming herself, and that was kind of interesting, even though her character was slightly annoying and godlike. But in this series, she has absolutely been, she's bigger than big, and it's a shame because you just got to see flaws in the characters, and also the fact that you have all these other people on the bridge who, they can pitch in as well with ideas.
Because we know what rigorous training they have to go through, so that they're all super intelligent, every single one of them. So yeah, absolutely. Well, because also we don't have enough like board meetings. I quite like that about Next Generation. Yes. I like the fact that they all sat down and went through the morality of certain situations. But in this, they're just sort of like, Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, they do it during an action scene rather than having an observation lounge scene or whatever. But I'm conscious of time because I know you've got to be somewhere, Pete. So we've got about 10 minutes. So shall we wrap up the final episode and our thoughts on that? We've talked about where we think it's going. So shall we just talk about what happened there?
Yeah, no. I watched this a couple of days ago too, and it is a struggle to figure out what happened. Right? They or to care. They got word from the mother. Right? The mother sent a sign that everything was okay.
No, that's Michael Burnham sent the signal back to Spock to say everything was all right. Yeah.
God.
Sorry, the mother was very ineffectual. I mean, it's a shame because I quickly just want to say, the actress whose name I don't have access to, but she was from The Wire, and The Wire is the sort of the show that showed that all these other TV series that you could do an ongoing storyline, but The Wire was just amazing, and Discovery is not.
Oh well,
yeah, and that was just a reminder of seeing her again. It was like, oh wow, The Wire. I'd love to go back and watch that again.
Wow, we really are, I think, quite divided on here about because even though I think it's flawed, I actually really like this, and I love Michael Burnham, and but I mean, the thing I had the biggest problem with in this last episode was the wrap up, because the whole briefing scene where they all cover up, where Discovery's actually gone, and Spock suggests that that they don't talk about this, and it's classified and removed from history or whatever. That to me makes really no sense at all, because not only we've had all of the things that Discovery has done previously. Okay, I know it was in the mirror universe when most of the Klingon War was going on, but it was still involved in the Klingon War. It had a sister ship. It had people that designed and built it, right? It had, even though it's only a skeleton crew that's gone forward 950 years, they've still got families, right? They've still got people who used to serve on the ship still have families. So this whole, we'll keep it secret and not mention it again, right? Just to sort of tie up why Spock had never mentioned Michael Burnham that Discovery had never been mentioned, that the Spore Drive, the Mirror Universe, and all of these sort of things had never been mentioned before, is senseless, because Spock never mentioned Cybok, and he never even mentioned that his father was the Vulcan ambassador until he was actually on board the ship ready to meet the captain in the original series. So, this writing explanation to try and deal with all this stuff really, in my opinion, is the worst thing of all of it, because it doesn't hold any water at all. Is it just me who thinks this, or do you guys agree?
I totally agree. You can't say that everyone has to keep something a secret when Cybok is never even mentioned, right? Even though you're flashing back to a time when theoretically Cybok would be heavily in the picture, right? Like, yeah.
But I mean, the fact that this is the reason that they don't mention time travel. We've got this temporal prime directive, and this is the reason that the Spore Drive technology is no longer mentioned, and all this. I mean, it just seems weak, and it seems a shame to actually write Discovery completely out of the history, and like you said, Simon, make this whole 2 seasons pointless. I just don't think, from a storytelling point of view, that was a particularly strong way to do it. It wasn't the most imaginative way they could have done this. I mean, what do you think, Ryan?
But also, how do they say that the Klingon War was actually started if it wasn't? Oh no, I mean, I suppose I'm getting myself confused, but I'm kind of thinking that, like Robot Lady, for example, how do they say she died?
Well, that's the thing. That's all of that is now mute. I mean, it's literally it's taken out the history books. So, it's like, well, the Klingon War was started by redacted.
Yeah.
There's all this,
null and void.
It's
null and void, but it doesn't make sense because Discovery, up until that point, had touched so many lives that to think they could just totally erase it from history doesn't make any sense. That's the thing. It just doesn't make sense.
It's a bit like, is it the film Sphere? At the end of Sphere, they use the powers to forget they've got the powers.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's a bit like that. It's a bit like, oh no, let's just forget. Okay, brilliant. Where does that leave us?
Yeah.
I mean, it is a shame to end it there. I don't think they needed to.
Well, I mean, that was a bit crap. And by the way, I also one of the things I did like was when they did the wormhole thing. Obviously, it's the 40th anniversary of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and I did like the fact that they used the same wormhole effect when they were going through that. I thought that was fucking cool. But I mean, they do end it. I really, really, really did love the last scene on the bridge of the Enterprise, because weirdly, it's almost 10 years to the day it was almost that obviously JJ had done a very similar scene in the first Star Trek reboot when Spock comes onto the bridge. Oh, well, actually, when Kirk comes onto the bridge and in his uniform for the first time and all this. And they did a sort of very similar thing here. And I have to say, I mean, I thought the bridge design, obviously JJ had sort of kept the layout the same, but they'd sort of gone with this sort of Apple Store white and silver looking bridge and whatever. But I love the fact that with this they've gone with the sort of shiny grey and orangey red, and sort of made it look like Kirk's bridge but updated. I thought that kind of worked really nicely.
The designs are wonderful. Yeah, absolutely.
Although I prefer the uniforms in the JJ films to the uniforms in this, but I
was thinking that. Like, I love the Discovery uniforms. I'm just going to say, and I'd be a bit gutted to be wearing that really nice uniform and then go, right, you're on the Enterprise. Oh no. Which colour am I? Oh, yellow. Oh, I'd be a bit.
Yeah, it was certainly a case of the generations where on that film you had all the different uniforms. I mean, you literally had the DS9's uniforms and the original Next Generation ones, and then of course when First Contact came along, they ditched them for the grey shoulder pad ones.
Yeah. Now I don't know what it is. There's something about, even though they've obviously got the red, yellow, and blue and all that correct, but I don't know what it is. It's nitpicky, but they're a bit too tailored, and the delta looks like it's slightly in the wrong place and whatever. I thought the JJ films did the uniforms slightly better, but this definitely did the bridge and the Enterprise itself better, I think.
I don't think William Shatner would be able to get away with this new uniform.
No, that's very true. Very true.
Yeah, I think would show.
I also liked what the composer Jeff Russo did, which essentially is what Giacchino did in the Star Trek movie as well, is where they take the theme and then they mix it with the original Alexander Courage theme music. I thought that was a nice way to end the show, and I would actually love to see a Captain Pike series with him number one and Spock on the Enterprise, but I don't know whether we're going to get that. But I'd rather that than them try and reintroduce a new Kirk again. I
want to see that. I don't want to see that.
I mean, also I felt it was slightly weird that we didn't get a continuation, something to set up the next series. Like in the end of series 1, we had the Enterprise turn up, and then so to set in events what happens in series 2. So we didn't get a glimpse of Discovery in the future. So I think that was a shame. I would have actually kind of liked to seen something. I know we got the red signal to say they arrived safely. How the fuck do they get the red signal to go back in time? I don't know.
Yeah.
What is it with these bloody signals? How do they work?
Why do they work? Down note.
We should never know.
Yeah. How did all of the signals appear at the same time at first, and then one by one?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, I do need to jump off. Thank you guys for having me back on. Please don't let me stop this conversation. I'm going to enjoy listening to it.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Right.
Thank you, Pete.
Well, thank you, Pete.
See you soon.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess I feel kind of bad continuing it without Pete. Maybe we should wrap it up. I don't know. I mean,
I feel like we almost got to a place where we were kind of like happy with the ending there, and then we all just went off again.
Yeah.
Wow, this is the problem. It's them trying to wrap this all up in a neat bow. There's too many problems with it. It is literally like, as you say, the end of Spear, where it's like, well, let's forget, but they're having to talk about a whole galaxy because so inside the Federation they can't talk about this, but what about the Klingons? What about all the other alien races?
Exactly. That's why that's why that isn't satisfying. I mean, that it's really weird. They gave one scene that wasn't satisfying at all, which was that briefing scene, and I was there thinking, that's why have they done that? That doesn't make any sense. And and then of course they have the shaved Spock turning up on the bridge of the Enterprise, and that totally delivered for me in the same way as I said it did 10 years ago when I was watching it at the IMAX with JJ's film, and it gave me goosebumps. I love that.
Even though the reason he was being the science officer on the bridge was to honor Michael Burnham, I felt that was a little weird because I was going to say
he was the science officer in The Cage, which takes place 4 years before this or whatever. So
I think I would have been happier if at the end of this, instead of this ridiculous, we'll just not say anything about it, I think I would have been happier if Q turned up and just made everything disappear to do with Discovery.
You see, that would have actually been better, I think. Yes.
Q turning up and be like, okay, now we're talking.
Because he could have done a Thanos snap and it all goes away, right? Literally.
It's away, yeah.
But, no, it did leave me with mixed feelings, but overall, I really enjoyed this, and I, obviously we've got to wait a whole year, but hopefully we'll have a Picard series, in the meantime, because they say that'll be before the end of this year, don't they?
That's right, they do. Yeah. So I've got to say, I'm so excited to see that first set shot of. I just want to see him on set. That's it, and I'll be so excited.
I know. It's this weird thing where I'm interested in seeing what they're going to do with it, but the problem is they can't do the old Picard because, and when I say old Picard, I mean the Picard from Next Generation, because of the CBS Viacom split, everything has to be different. So that's a real problem. That's a real problem continuity wise, because it's like, well, what are they going to do with the character then if he cannot be the Picard from Next Generation? And what Picard can he be?
Yeah, I mean, it'll help that sort of more than 20 years have passed, so a lot could have happened to the character in that time, I guess. But you're right, it is a problem. It is a problem.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. He was suffering from a kind of dementia, wasn't he? In All Good Things. So I get the feeling that they won't.
Well, I mean, interestingly, timeline-wise,
I've heard rumors about what the storyline is. I don't know if you guys have heard any rumors about it, but I'm not very excited from what I've heard for rumor wise.
Okay, well, you know what rumors are like, so don't listen. But
true, yes, but I mean the thing is though, a lot of these rumors about Discovery turned to be true, or the predictions we even made turned out to be true. So
I was right about the spore, wasn't I? Yes, the random spore.
Yes, you were. Yes,
but
yeah,
you were right about Michael Burnham. Yeah. So
yes, yeah. Well, I have to say that her being the Red Angel was very obvious, even though they threw a curveball with her mother.
I found it quite a boring curveball.
Yes. Again, it was just to try and throw us off, the audience off. But it just didn't make any sense because so her plan was to go back in time to stop Control. And she said, I've gone back many times. I've seen you die so many times, all this stuff. But the only person I could get through to was Spock. But in the series, we only saw her version of the Red Angel only a couple of times. The other times, it was Michael Burnham. And it was just like, I was like, oh, well, that's just a waste of that character.
Yeah. They did labour that point quite a bit as well with the sort of flashback stuff in the finale, which I just thought maybe they laboured that a bit too much, but
well, they had to show it. I mean, and that I must admit that bit when you showed her appearances of the Red Angel was fine. I mean, you need it there so that everybody can kind of understand what's going on. I mean, if she just sort of disappeared and then come back and be like, I've done it, it would have been I think not very satisfying. I mean, that moment at the it kind of, I thought it was slightly when she first time traveled was a bit like Interstellar and 2001. A little bit, just a little bit. It was just a little bit of that, because hey, we've got to get back to the action, because that is what a lot of these shows is about, episodes are about. Sorry, I'm not trying to clump the Discovery in with other shows, but it is, as you say, it's a very expensive show. They've spent a lot of money, and You know, a lot of it is to do with these space battles.
I really do though. I wish kind of you know, obviously in hindsight now, but I wish that we'd done some other reactions to some of the episodes along the journey, because you know, because the finale wasn't 100% satisfying and was underwhelming. I do feel like we've rightly so given it quite a hard time, but at the same time there was a hell of a lot of this show that I absolutely loved, and I couldn't wait. I mean, every week I just couldn't wait to the next episode to carry on watching it. So it's, in my book, it was doing something right, even though there are things that frustrate me about it. It's the same, exactly the same as the first season. I feel exactly the same. You know,
I think they're very good at that kind of, you want to know more. They're very good at that. That's one thing they're very good at, is like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next.
That's true.
That's I want to see what the next episode is, because I mean, I did when I watched them all back to back. It was like, oh, okay, well, where's this going? Where's this going? Where's this going? But then most of the time, like, also questioning, you know, why suddenly do we have this, you know, AI who wants to destroy everything, when, you know, ships, computers, and, you know, robots and everything, no matter how far into the future they are, you know, they've always wanted to be, you know, I guess not so destructive. I mean, even it's that thing with, you know, okay, they obviously went, well, we like the Borg, you know, they're a big bad, but the Borg had this point of view, was that they were chasing perfection. They felt that perfection was being this one unit, and that they spread across the universe, infecting other, you know, cultures, is because they wanted to ingest those cultures and make them part of the whole. And yet with AI, it was just like, well, I want to become sentient so I can blow things up.
Yeah, AI is never happy, is it?
No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, okay, I mean, they're going down the Terminator route, and with the Terminator films, they, you know, you never know the reasons why Skynet decides to destroy humanity. You know, it becomes sentient, and it goes, oh, I don't like these humans, I'm going to blow them up. You know, I think there was a line in the film, one of the films, wasn't there, that they tried to turn it off. They tried to you know, it became sentient, and they tried to turn the switch, try to turn the computer off, and it just protected itself. This AI, this control, we never have a sense of it, really, do we? We never have this idea of, well, you know, it already feels sentient, and it also feels like, you know, it can destroy, you know, the galaxy anyway. So why does it need this information about AI?
Yeah,
to do
it's a trope. I mean, this is kind of, you know, happened in the Matrix and everything.
But I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, even in the Matrix, it was kind of like, you know, again with the AI in the Matrix, they were their own creatures, and humanity tried to destroy them by blacking out the sky. And then when their power source, the sun, went away, they just found another power source, which was human beings, and they came up with the Matrix as a form of control. That makes sense. That's a reason for existing, for it to be there. There is no reason why this AI wants to become sentient and then leads to the destruction of the galaxy.
Yeah. No, no, you're right. I mean, it's the whole thing's problematic.
And the thing is, as well, I know it's they want it to be fast paced, but still, you take time to you know, for us to understand where this villain's coming from.
Yeah, well, I mean, interestingly, I think it just shows you, you know, how the show has been for people, because you know, on this episode, obviously Pete's off the line now, but you know, I kind of feel like Pete didn't particularly like it. You sound like you didn't particularly like it, Simon. But on the other hand, even though myself and Ryan, well, I'm speaking for Ryan here, he might disagree with me, but even though we see the flaws in it, I think that we both kind of enjoyed it. Am I right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You know, I can't say I didn't enjoy it. It's that thing though, isn't it? Like if you already know you're not enjoying something, a lot of little things start leaping out and become bigger things, don't they? Whereas if you're just sort of enjoying it and it's entertaining you, you sort of tend to just let them lie, don't you? So it's interesting to hear all of the issues with it, because again, I think they're all valid points. But yeah, I'm on the same page in that I found it enjoyable. I really did. And I'm very excited about where it goes next.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've spoken this before about when it came from with the Next Generation Star Trek series, that it always seemed to be that they didn't find their way until series 3, and that's when the shows really sort of kicked into gear and started, bringing everything that they had done before into fruition. And it's usually the point when those series really got good. I mean, point in like Deep Space Nine, where season 3 was the beginning of the Dominion War, and it gave the show a bit more focus. But the thing is, though, up to the first 2 series, we got to know the characters, and there were some really interesting episodes in that. And with Discovery, it's kind of like that. There hasn't, apart from like Saru, Pike, Michael Burnham, Robot Lady, development-wise, the characters, it hasn't been that much there. So, when it comes to Series 3, you don't have that foundation that the other Star Trek series had for Series 3. So it's kind of worrying that it won't really find its stride that way. So, I don't know. I mean, I shall probably watch it when Series 3's, just to see what the future looks like, the future. And I'll probably watch the whole thing, because they're very good at that sort of what J.J. Abrams calls mystery box. So, it asks a lot of questions, and you want to find out what the answers are. And that's kind of like why I sort of watched it, was to sort of find out, well, where is this going? What's going to happen? And ultimately the sort of the answer at the end was kind of disappointing. That's why I'm ragging on it, is the fact that it promised all this, and then when it turned up, it was just like it's like being promised that you'll get a brand new computer for Christmas, and then on Christmas morning you go down and it's like a 10-year-old computer that your dad found in the garage or something like that. It's really fucking disappointing. And that's what the series of Discovery has been like. It had this build up, and you was like interested in where it was going. It was kind of promising some stuff, and then ultimately it didn't deliver.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real crime of the ending was the fact that they did try and fit it into the canon continuity by
Yes.
Erasing it, redacting it, whatever. But just making it classified isn't a good enough reason. There would have been a better way.
Well, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, they got time travel. They could have just gone back in time
and fixed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But never mind.
But no, they yeah. Well, I mean, as I say, well, fingers crossed. That the third series might be good. I mean, it's be interesting to see what the future is going to be like.
Riddled with angry AI, I reckon.
Yeah, exactly. Now, and the other thing is, I mean, I know people who didn't like this and said they almost threw stuff at the screen and whatever. But also
Yes.
you know, the previous Star Trek shows also didn't live in a time when absolutely everything was under the microscope like it is today. And the thing is, you get, because of, you know, toxic fandom and whatever out there, when people point out these things, like when not necessarily the plot holes, but things like the Mary Sue or the Me Too aspects or whatever, it is that sort of thing that once you've seen them, you can't unsee them. You know, once they've been pointed out to you, they become much more obvious than necessarily, you know, it comes across initially.
Yeah, I mean the whole Michael Burnham thing, and I've spoken a lot about the whole her being a Mary Sue and everything. Because the problem is that there are no other characters who have an opinion, you know, or an idea. You know, that going back to what Ryan said about, you know, Next Generation, it's like, you know, Klingons on the starboard bow, let's conference. Exactly. you know, there aren't any other voices when it comes to solving these problems, and it's just this. I don't know. It's the writing. It all comes back.
The most important thing of all. Yeah.
Thing, yeah. It's like no matter what your special effects are like, and your sets and your costumes and the everything, the music, they could be brilliant, but the writing's crap. The writing is crap. And unfortunately, the writing in this has been kind of lacking. I mean, the fact that there's no David Feige, you know, overseeing this. There is that it seems to be. There doesn't seem this one brain who's like making all the decisions. It is, as you say, it's kind of like making it up as they go along, and taking things from, you know, previous Star Trek and just throwing them in there because, hey, that looks cool, or this is what we think the fans want.
I think part of the problem back to the initial development of the series was that obviously, and we don't know exactly what the plans were, but from what we can tell, Brian Fuller and Nicholas Meyer, they had the idea to do this sort of anthology series where you know, you'd have one series set in one era of Star Trek, and then it would move and talk, you know, show something else. But obviously the practicalities of that, you know, they built sets, they'd created costumes, props, visual effects models, etc., and also they'd cast people in probably contracts that would last multiple seasons and whatever. So it just, from a business and an economics point of view, it didn't really fit the creativity that they wanted. So they've had to, you know, and Alex Kurtzman, who obviously doesn't have necessarily the best track record with some stuff in recent years, but at the same time, you know, to give him credit where it's due, you know, he is trying to respond to obviously what CBS want from this, but also what the fans want, and you know, taking the show in a different direction from previous showrunners. So you know, I think season 3 will be the real test, because as I said, we really are in undiscovered territory with season 3, and you know, that could be quite exciting. It is an opportunity, and they've got a year to develop this. You know, there's an opportunity there. We've got the ship, we've got the cast, we've got the, you know, the sets, we've got all of that stuff in place, and now is the time where they could maybe do something quite compelling with what that 33rd century holds, and hopefully, you know, hopefully they won't mess it up. But even Pete said he's going to subscribe next year to CBS All Access, and you said you'll watch it, Simon. So you know, even the doubters, well, there's a glimmer of hope, right?
Well, it's this thing. I mean, you say glimmer of hope. I mean, I'm just going and see I don't know. I feel like I'm going to go and see a train wreck because it's like, well, they've kind of updated the past of Star Trek. So, you know, this Discovery's a prequel to uh, Kirk and Spock, though not a prequel to The Cage, which I was actually taken aback by. Really, I actually thought this
Oh no,
was
this
all
is
happening before The
four
Cage.
years after The Cage.
This after The Cage, yeah. So yeah, when we had the previously on Star Trek at the beginning of that episode, it was kind of like, oh, okay, oh, all right. I thought this hadn't happened yet.
Which kind of works, because when you think about it, even though they're, you know, it's a visual reboot, they're reimagined and stuff for television now, but when you look at the costume design and the bridge design and ship design, it is actually Kirk's era that they've designed, not like it was in The Cage.
My point being is that the actual design of everything they've done for Discovery so far was so futuristic that they could have just said it originally in the 900 years, and it would have been fine. I don't think we would have had the problems we've had with it because of the continuity, because of them saying, well, this is the prime timeline and this is set before Kirk and Spock, and it's just like, well, you know, this all, as we found out that they went back, you know, technologically wise.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
You know,
that's been one of the problems. Yeah.
It's like going, yeah. And it's just like, well, you should have just said it in the future. I mean, we would have accepted that the Klingons now look bald and, you know, different because it was the future. They could have, you know, it. So the future from the point they're jumping from, I don't. But it's just they're going to be spending a lot of money. I think
they are.
Either that, or the fact that they're probably going to jump into a universe that has no technology. It's either going to go one way or the other. It's going to be, I don't know, Fifth Element kind of universe, or it's going to be, you know, I don't know. Try and think what kind of other film, or the Village universe. throw back to a previous episode.
But I mean, who knows? Who knows what it might be like 1,000 years in the future? So you know, it could be.
And that's the problem, isn't it? That is the problem that they've written themselves into now. So what is Discovery going to be? Is Discovery going to be a technological ship that turns up in a future that has no technology, or is it a ship that is so behind everything that it's out of place with the rest of the galaxy?
That's what we're going to have to wait and see. And I think actually it's quite an exciting prospect, actually, that we don't know where this is going, because we're not trying to fill a gap in stuff that's already been established, which is what really the problem with this show was. You know,
we'll have to wait and see, but the problem is they need to sort out their writing. They just need to have a set plan and stick to it. And I know that Series 2 and Series 1 as well went for a whole load of rewrites. So whatever the original plan was that they had set out with was like thrown out the window. And hence why it doesn't make much sense.
Indeed. Ryan, have you got? I mean, you're our guest here. Have you got any further thoughts or anything you want to say?
Ryan's final thoughts. No, I remain very excited about a third season, and I think there is a problem in that they're now going to have to like really think about technologies and designing it, and there's going to be a lot more pre-production in this one, I think. But I think that it's been very interesting to hear the different views on a show that at the end is based on something we all love. And it's a very difficult relationship, isn't it? Like Star Trek, it's a very difficult one. But do you know what I love about Star Trek is that even though we can disagree, it will never be like the Star Wars fandom at the moment.
Oh, that is definitely a whole nother podcast, definitely. But you know, yes,
is definitely a whole other podcast. Yeah, or whole series of podcasts.
We can talk Star Trek, coming at it from different sides, and still get on. and that's that is something to take from this, I think.
Indeed. Ryan, I want to ask you actually one last thing about Star Trek is because obviously Simon and I have talked about this. What is your out of all the Star Trek there's been? If you had to pick a favorite, which I know is very hard to do, but what is it for you?
What series?
Yeah, out of all the different iterations of Star Trek over the years.
It's absolutely Next Generation.
Okay, you said that with no hesitation. So cool.
Hands down, it absolutely is. I think, and also, I mean, you've got the fact that it did last for as long as it lasted, and that was for a good reason, I think. It just, I'm absorbed in it. It was my go-to show. I've probably watched every episode a few times. Sometimes I just have it on in the background when I'm doing other things. It's just, I don't know what it was. I just really enjoyed that world, and which is why I'm excited about Picard, but also a little bit troubled by it with all the legal wranglings. But yeah, Next Generation was something that's some of my favourite TV, let alone Star Trek. But I've enjoyed every version, to be honest. I liked Enterprise a lot more than I thought I was going to, because I'm never, if I'm honest, Discovery troubled me because I was never a fan of going backwards, and so Discovery did trouble me. And for all the reasons we've discussed, I think. But I'm always intrigued by every new series and what they do with it, and it's always fun. Star Trek is always fun, whatever they do, whether it works or not. They always find a way at the end to fix it, even if sometimes it might be a little bit quick.
Simon, any final thoughts from you?
I mean, I've heard this sort of been spoken about Star Wars, and I kind of think of this about Star Trek now as well, is that Star Wars is the girlfriend I used to have, and we're kind of now parting, our ways, and it's this is in reference to sort of episode 9, where it's kind of like, well, just do this one last thing for me, and then that's it. We'll be separated, and it does kind of feel like that with Discovery, that they are trying to go for the newer fans and they're separating from the old fans. And it's kind of like, look, you got your own Star Trek, and this Star Trek is not for you. This is for new people who don't care about things like story or logic or plots or characters. We just want, big explosions and things whizzing around, and we just want excitement and adventure, every second. And I don't know, I mean, I feel like they're not going to get the loyal fan base that the original Trek got. Because, think of it, I mean, Star Trek is been going this long because of its fans. I mean, the original series was cancelled after the third series, and it was syndication and the fans brought it back. We would never have had the movies. We would never have had Next Generation or the other sort of series after that. And so Discovery, the makers of Discovery, or the executives at CBS, are kind of thumbing their noses at us, and it's a shame, because we're its biggest fans. We will support this stuff, and I think if they can carry on this way, Star Trek is going to die. Because if the original fans aren't going to support it, and they're not really getting new people involved in it, the fans following it, then they're not going to see a reason to make it anymore. So it's kind of worrying. It is kind of worrying. They need to, sort their house out, really. And these sort of legal wranglings that have put them in this position, they need to sort out, because it's getting ridiculous. It's like, well, Star Trek is this one universe. You can't have these different, entities trying to be the same thing. It just doesn't work. And I think that's the problems they've been having with the Picard series. I mean, there's been a whole load of troubles being reported about the making of that. So it's kind of worrying. It's kind of worrying. I mean, Discovery is exciting to watch at the time, but when you think about it afterwards, it's just, it's weird. Star Trek used to be a feast, and now it feels like a McDonald's Happy Meal.
Oh dear. Okay, an expensive Happy Meal. I mean, even though I think everything you said is valid, I still remain optimistic. Star Trek has been an important part of my entire life. And it's horrible, to think that we're getting older. All these iterations of Star Trek, but it's really important. And I must admit, I'd absolutely love to be creatively involved in Star Trek. But that's doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. So as a fan, I am keen to see more, and I just hope that they really, really focus on, good stories, good characters, and, interesting reflections on mankind. And if they can achieve that, and they can set it in all different time periods with all sorts of new characters and whatever, I'm excited for it. I mean, the idea of a Section 31 sort of covert show, that sort of takes two of my favorite things, Star Trek and like Mission Impossible, and sort of blend them together. Man, I'd love to be in that show. So let's I want to stay optimistic about it and hope that it's going to deliver.
Yeah, and I don't see any reason why not. I would, like you, I would like to see much more thoughtful episodes. I mean, they could start every episode with a message from Pike, because he can just leave messages for her every day, and then sometime in the future she can watch them all back. It would just be sort of quite nice to sort of, that's how they can have the original characters in it, by them sort of mentoring her from the past.
As long as he's not a hologram, because he hates those.
Yeah, it'll probably be letters.
Love it.
But yeah, I'd like a lot more thought, a lot more emotion, I think.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what the future brings.
The 950 years in the future. Yes. There you go. Cool. All right. Well, it's customary on these podcasts, Ryan, to give our guests the opportunity to plug any work, or find where people can get hold of you if they wish to. So have you got anything you want to leave us with?
No, not really. Apart from the fact that not only do I love sci-fi, but I love horror. Horror was my gateway into films, and you can read my thoughts on new and old horror films by visiting Horror DNA, and you can search me by name, Ryan Holloway, and you'll see a whole bunch of my reviews. And please read and share your thoughts with me.
And Keith, where can people find out more about your work?
Well, if you go to YouTube and put in British Eyles, that's Eyles, as in my last name, there are some short thriller type films that I've made there that you can watch, and you can obviously get in touch via the podcast.
And as always, you can find my work at independentrunnings.com. And here's an interesting fact for you guys. It's been 15 years since I made my short film Goodbye.
Wow.
This is pointed out to me by the star and writer of the short, Ashvin. And I must admit, I was like, that took me by surprise. I think it's been that long since we made that film. But you can check that out on the website. If you go there, there's a link to the short on YouTube, as well as many other short films that I've made, and trailers and music videos and stuff there. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and all good podcast providers. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Movie Heaven, Movie Hell. And please leave us a rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher. It all helps. Well, that just leaves me to to thank our guests for coming on. So thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Pete. I know you can't reply, but it's always a pleasure to have you on talking Trek. So we'll hopefully have you back on soon to talk more.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, guys. I've really enjoyed it.
Yes, and you can join us, and please listen to the next episode of Movie Heaven, Movie Hell.
Live long and prosper.
Yes, but don't lose the beard.